December 20th. I'd like to call this meeting of the Tewksbury Board of Health to order. For the record, member John Buschetti is absent tonight, so there are just 4 members present tonight. First item on the agenda are approval of minutes from our last meeting of October 18th, 2018, since we did not have a November meeting. So I have gone through it, Director has gone through it, and George has gone through it.
I have read it as well. I have no comments.
Okay? Same here. Okay.
I'm going to move to accept the approval of the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Scronis put forth the motion to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2018 as submitted, and George Ferdinand seconded the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously 4-0. On to new business. Regulation updates, statewide tobacco law changes.
So Ron couldn't be here tonight, but he sent me a short synopsis of some of the changes. I don't know if you're aware, but some really important changes happened very quietly in the state. As of the end of this month, the state will be going 21 for purchasing of tobacco. In this town, it was already 21. And it's a very confusing law because apparently if you are in a town that isn't 21 and you turn 18 before the end of the year, you can still buy tobacco. So it's very strange. But in our community, it was 21, so the state is catching up to us, which is good. Tobacco product definition changed. Vapes are now included in the state definition of tobacco product. Tewksbury's definition is stricter, as it includes products with nicotine content that are vaporized. So we're more stricter again. We're also stricter in that we talk about any combustible products, where the tobacco law makes it tobacco combustible products. They are separating marijuana from tobacco so that the Cannabis Commission can regulate the consumption or the use of cannabis. They are restricting the use of marijuana from any place that you can smoke tobacco. So it's the same rule, it's just in a different house. So it's handled by that. So some people might say, oh, it's lessened. It hasn't really lessened, it's just handed over jurisdiction. So if someone's smoking, it's not the tobacco person who checks that out. It's someone from the Cannabis Commission. Vaping in the workplaces, the state law now will prohibit vaping wherever smoking is prohibited. And the Tewksbury defining of vaping is stricter again, as it includes the use of products without nicotine that are vaporized. They did not say, I think it says with nicotine, so I'm not sure. We are tighter. Strangely enough, we did have a complaint this past month for a job site that I passed on to Ron. It's very rare that we go to a job site. It happened to be a construction site, so it wasn't really anything he could do anything with. It wasn't really a business. It was an active construction site. You often don't know where these complaints are coming from and what their motives are, so he didn't have any issues with that because he didn't really know what the problem was. He didn't observe anything anyway, but it was active construction. So, it's really important that we acknowledge that this community and 100+ other communities, really got the state to listen, and that it's now 21 statewide. Whether everyone agrees or not, at least it's statewide, and it's not this town by town. I think that's important, that it be more homogeneous instead of crossing the town line and, being able to purchase one place and not the other. And I did note that on the news the other day, I heard that the Surgeon General is actually considering banning menthol and mint,
Yes.
which would be groundbreaking, because menthol and mint has always been allowed in tobacco products. So I'm not sure where that's going to go, if that's really going to happen. And why now? I don't know the meaning behind it. So maybe we'll hear more about that this coming year. But it's an interesting item to be talking about when right now vaping is really such a huge problem. Lots of our meetings are about vaping, and now here we have an all-time low of high school students that are smoking regular tobacco, down like 9%. We're now up to about 40% of high school students who have vaped in recent time. So we don't call them e-cigarettes apparently, because that's not their lingo anymore. So we're trying to catch up and call it vaping. So I'll let you know if there's any more things that will affect us. Ron is looking at our regulation versus that, so we can talk about recommendations later if there are any definition changes. We won't be addressing that tonight, but we probably will in January or March. February, sorry.
When you and I had been talking about this last month,
Mm.
I think you had also, if I recall, you had mentioned that in the new state regulation, I think it also restricted certain entities from selling tobacco products. Isn't it pharmacies?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That was probably right on there. So that was the other thing. Pharmacies are now not going to be selling tobacco products. They're not being able to. So Walgreens, Walmart will be removing tobacco products from their shelves. That's groundbreaking as well. So they'll be following what CVS was doing. So I think, I'm not sure, we haven't really talked to them about it, but I would expect corporates, would know of it, but we'll make sure that, Ron will make sure it's off the shelves, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I noticed the last time I was in Walmart, that the checkout aisle that has all the tobacco products was empty, and there's a sign saying.
They're on top of it.
New state law,
Okay, good.
so it was good to see that.
So that is another huge change. So it didn't say pharmacies, it just said medical facilities, and they're counting medical facilities, including pharmacies.
And I think the other thing that we'll need to check with Ron is, especially where the incidence of teenage use of vaping products has skyrocketed. Our current regulations do not restrict who can sell the vaping devices. Even though the flavored vape juices are in the 21, or the tobacco-only locations. I'd be curious to get Ron's impression of, is that something we should also restrict to those resellers, or is it a moot point because you can buy most of this mail order and there's no way for us to
I know.
accept what Amazon is shipping?
There's also a conflict with illegal drug paraphernalia now, too, with marijuana. So the question is that going to only have to be, is that going to be not be able to be sold in regular stores if it's considered, because there's a lot of use of vaping with cannabis oil as well. So there is a discussion, there's a lot of discussion between, the whole marijuana tobacco issue. But I know that the sales of items is definitely important to some people in this community. They've asked me about it, and at this point, Ron has said we don't have anything locally about that. But we can ask him if other communities are doing that. I don't know if they are.
Or
I
would
haven't-
be one of the first.
Right, and what the language would be. And we could always ask the DJ Wilson with the state, if there's been any opinions on that at all.
Just more into the auspices of really trying to identify, is there anything else that we can do to, within our powers, to stem increasing teenage uses? We've done a lot for tobacco products, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. the schools might be a good, connection. I mean, they're at a loss right now,
Yeah.
what to do. I mean, teachers don't even know what they look like. I think there's been some trainings, or not trainings, but some informational sessions for parents, because parents are under the impression, or some may be, that it's not as harmful as tobacco smoke. And that jury's still out, of course. We don't know all that, but for them to assume that, it's okay. So I think it's definitely treated lesser, by parents, I think, according to the superintendent and conversations I have with Chief Stanley. Parents seem more tolerant of their children with them, having the items. But you're right, online, it's really so easy for them to get everything.
It sounds like there's a big educational piece we need to look at. too.
It's just like it's like rolled in a storm, and I think everyone, here it was this product that almost no one was using as cessation from smoking, and then it now is hip and cool and it's in colors and all kind of different shapes and sizes, and and it's interesting because I guess I've never really seen, so they have this cartridge and then they have these little tips, so they carry the tips like in their sock or in their sleeve, and they can you can say, hey, instead of saying, hey, can I bum a cigarette, it's like, hey, can I use your cartridge? And they just click their tip on it and they can have a hit with vape. So that it's very small, the item.
Yeah, as I mentioned, last thing I'll mention is, we're reading the paper today that Altria, the #1 cigarette manufacturer, has purchased Juul. I'm very concerned about that, because there's people looking at vaping devices being used as a smoking cessation tool. Now the largest tobacco seller
Wow, can't
controls that
imagine.
product. So,
Okay.
Is there postings at the high school about bringing,
I suspect there are, but I don't go in there too often. But I know I'm sure it's in their handbook, all those things. They get confiscated.
who was actually in charge of posting school properties at the school committee?
I don't know. I mean, everything that goes up in the school is passed through them. I mean, we wouldn't even, we'll just put something up, you'd have to put it through the
Do we know
superintendent or
if there's
whatever.
any enforcement going on over there, and whether there's anyone getting caught?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's drawerfuls of, the drawer of vape. They call the parents, I don't know exactly what the protocol is, but we can find out.
I guess I'd be more interested in repeat violators.
Yeah, because the hard part too is that with the cannabis oil, they can't tell who is high because there's no marijuana odor. So someone, you could think it's just vaping, something, and you're actually vaping cannabis. So that's a problem too. So they're getting high with the vapes. So it's not just nicotine. It's the THC as well. It's a big dilemma. It's back to the old boy, lock in the bathrooms kind of thing. Like when we were young, they would lock the bathrooms to keep people from smoking when they went to the bathrooms. So it's that same battle all over again. But with the added problem without the odor, it's very difficult for them.
Is there a diversion program or anything that they, if you're caught with or using, is there some sort of diversion program where you have to go speak to someone about addiction?
I don't know the answer. Maria, did she mention it?
I thought she had mentioned that there was at least some sort of diversion, and are we making sure that they're hitting the diversion program, so at least you can keep a tab on who's going to diversion, number one, and number two, whether or not it's working.
Yeah, I don't know who's,
Maria had a program, I know she mentioned it.
I'm sure she's involved in, yeah.
so we actually need to get Ron and Maria here for, just to get a meeting of the minds. Okay,
You're
well,
right.
thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
And that's a good segue into old business. E-Market, 1699 Shawshene Street, noncompliance of Chapter 11 Tewksbury Board of Health regulations for tobacco control, restricting the sale of tobacco products and nicotine delivery products. In the case of a first violation, a fine of $100 and a mandatory appearance before the Tewksbury Board of Health to explain the plan he or she has developed to avoid additional violations.
Okay.
Assuming that's who you folks are, because we never get an audience here.
Yep. Come right up.
So if you want to come up, there is there will be a sign-in sheet in a second, if you can both fill that out. And once you've filled it out, if you can each speak directly to the microphone, just state your name and address, please, for the record.
Good evening, Imad Hinnawi.
Okay, just pull the microphone
Yeah, okay.
Closer.
for all of us, 'cause
Okay.
It's on tape.
Yes, hi. Good evening. My name Imad Hinnawi. I opened the store 2006, 2010 Whiteham Bantry, 2010, 2012 7-Eleven, 2012 until now E-Market. I don't have any problem since 2006 until the guy, he did mistake about the guy come is old one and he did mistake asking for ID. But after he did violation, I tell him no, ask anybody, come stop in the store, check ID, and after that I call the guy for register. I put ID, any tobacco, put any tobacco, check ID. Remember, and we behind the register, and I put two sign in the window, sign behind the MBLW, sign in the container. This one, I think, is first time since 2006. I don't have any problem. But I know this guy. He's a good guy. He's smart, but he did mistake.
So in your packets, there is the handwritten response that was provided that states what he was just stating, that they put it on the register, all cigarettes, tobacco products ask for ID first, and that they put a calendar out, and every day the employee writes down that date. So it's in their minds, you know, it's a good thing to trigger that every day. As to the statement of not having a problem, I think we know that last year, it's been just over a year since you'd had your other violation that you had appealed to the court. So you had a sale, and you were appealing it. You didn't want it to be your first offense because you were concerned, you know, that you'd have another. So you did have another sale just over 12, maybe it was, you know, maybe 15 months or 14 months. Yes, just over that. So it almost became your second sale, almost. So that's an inaccurate information.
And do we know if, I can remember from last meeting, last year, did they in fact pay the $100 or?
After that meeting, she came down that next morning, apologized for missing the September meeting, went right upstairs, paid the fine. I forget what the date was, maybe that was October, I can't remember. But then we were going to have them in November, that they were leaving the country for a full month. So they didn't want one of their employees coming to represent them. They wanted to represent themselves. So that's why we didn't have a meeting in November, and we just put them on in December.
To the chair, I have a couple questions.
Go right ahead.
The first one, which you've already answered, Susan, but I want to make sure this is their plan. It
Yes.
was due the 9th of November, and they turned it in on the 7th, correct? My next question is...
Yes.
On last year, August 23rd, the inspection...
Going into the food.
The 20th, which was today.
Oh, hold on
Are
one
you
second.
talking food, or are you talking tobacco?
Yeah, just tobacco.
Thank you.
So you did, okay, you answered my question. I just wanted to make
Yes, yes, we,
It's obvious, but I don't, I'm looking for more of a professional thing, just being honest.
she was just about to jump on a plane to leave, and you ran, didn't you? You came and brought this down so that, because I said
Thank you.
you all wanted that before you left, so that was, I told her it was okay to be handwriting.
How many employees are there? How many employees?
I have two and me wife.
So you and your wife and two others?
Yes. Yeah.
And how old are they?
How old is Amberly?
How old are the employees?
Yeah, I have 48 and a lady around 35.
And I'll let you know that you passed an inspection tonight. So Ron was there tonight around 5:30, and he emailed me, and they did not sell. They asked for ID. So we passed inspection tonight from tobacco. That wasn't planned, he was just here in town.
And I would only ask that they certify that their plan has been circulated to their employees. And I would like to see their employee's signature on the plan.
Mhm.
Do you understand that?
Yeah.
I'd like to, and maybe that can be typed, just so that, and have them sign it and date it and bring it back for both employees. And it wouldn't hurt to have you two sign it either, okay?
All right.
So everyone is aware of what your protocol is. And you did pass an inspection tonight, so looks like your plan is working already. I don't know who was behind the counter tonight, but why don't we get everyone?
Same guy.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's encouraging. Why don't we get everyone to sign it, and then you can get it back, and we'll know that your plan's been implemented.
All right, okay.
Okay.
I don't have anything further.
As long as they understand that a second, and if you had a second in the next time, you would end up with an automatic suspension and a fine of $200. So,
The next one cost a lot of business,
Mm,
7
okay.
days.
Yeah, we just had one in town back in November. They closed for 7 days, so, because of a,
That's a loss of all revenue, lottery, food, you know.
okay.
okay, so this is no public hearing, so there's no motions we need to make with this. It was more just having you come before us and more to have you understand that we take the tobacco regulations serious, and we also realize that there are inherent challenges with being the retail business, selling the product, but we're trying to come up with a solution. That's why we ask everyone that has had a sales violation to put something in writing, because some of the other sales violators have been talking amongst each other to try to see what could they do collectively to make sure they don't come before us again, and more importantly, lose the ability to sell tobacco products for 7 days, if not longer, if it's a third violation. So we thank you for submitting this, and we thank you for coming
Thank you.
tonight.
Okay. So the second thing I'd like to discuss, since they are here, rather than leave and have to set up another time, I did an inspection at E-Market today, and we had some reoccurring violations as compared to last year's package. There was a new unusual item that was, there's grape leaves that were labeled, and they're in plastic packages. They showed me that there are cans, I've never seen grape leaves in cans, that they purchase, and they open the cans and they put them in there, so that kind of brings them into a new realm. I'm not sure that that is something that we should start here. All their other items are purchased, like a commercial company comes in with a sandwich that's labeled and dated, and it's put in there. Getting into foods, other foods, when they purchased this, Luann's approval was if you get into food preparation and other things, you will be looking at a 5,000, or would be a 1,500 or whatever grease tank. But I'm also thinking about the food safety aspect, that I'm not sure that handling foods and repackaging them is something that we would want really to start increasing here, so.
Well, we've consistently dealt with repeat violations such as these before, and we've almost developed a response to repeat violations. And I think what we've discovered is that sometimes people that are making repeat violations need help and assistance from a professional to attempt to avoid those in the future. And similar to your monitoring plan for your tobacco, we've required monitoring plans for safety of the public. You have violations here that just can't seem to be corrected without a plan. So my recommendation would be to create a plan and possibly speak to a professional about assisting you with the plan for compliance and to avoid repeat violations in the future. And I know that sounds draconian, but to be honest with you, it's worked very well in the past with other people that have had the same problem and similar circumstances. And we wouldn't be selectively enforcing anything. This would be consistent with what we've done in the past, is look to professional help. I'm looking at a couple of different areas that you might need some professional assistance in. Some of these more than others, and just looking at them from the standpoint of what you need to do from the floor standpoint and the maintenance standpoint. Well, there's someone out there that can assist you with that. And I don't think that that needs to be a continuing monitoring situation after you repair it. Then I think that we could look at your response to remediation by new construction or new placement as part of your plan. And I think that that's a good thing. But what we would require is that you enter into a contract with somebody and you provide the contract with a date that the work will be completed by. We need a date that the work would be completed by. If you were to do this without a monitoring plan for your physical improvements, we would want contracts, and we would want to know that those people who are going to perform the contracts do what is necessary, the proper preparation, the proper implementation, and the proper installation. And then we would come and inspect that portion. And I don't think monitoring after that, except for cleanliness, is really necessary. So you have a plan here to replace the things that are broken, the switches, et cetera, et cetera. Replace the tiles, replace the things that can't be maintained anymore because they're simply outdated, worn out, or not capable of cleanliness. And there's a number of things on here that I think you could look at the pictures and keep a physical list of what needs to be repaired, have them get a contractor, have them enter into a contract, provide the contract and a date for completion, which would trigger a date for reinspection on those things.
So the food code now basically says, for core violations, those that are just more like floors, walls, and ceilings, you should go no longer than 30 days. Cleaning, really, you have up to 14 days. But you could require it sooner, or you could alternatively accept, agreements for something else.
I would feel comfortable with 30 days. It's the holidays, you're not gonna get a contract over the holidays,
Oh, no.
right? And you would be able to reach out and find a flooring contractor who would be able to come in and address these things. You'd be able to find an electrical contractor, or you'd be able to find other contractors that could make the facility comply with the food code so that you could actually conduct food services.
The second piece would be the actual knowledge piece.
And that's, there's actually two more components,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
The second component goes with the knowledge thing, but putting things on the floor, what happens when they're on the floor is someone picks them up and invariably puts them on a table or a surface. That happens all the time. So it comes off the floor and it ends up on a surface, and then the next person doesn't know that that surface is compromised. So putting things on the floor is simply a matter of management. I see that you have racks and shelves on your stands, and then people slide things underneath them. A lot of people come up with a palletized system, because you can't slide anything under a palletized system. You have to put it on the pallet, and it's lifted up off the floor. That's a knowledge thing. And, we're telling you, and we're suggesting it, but you have to implement that into your plan. And it would seem to me that you might want to speak to a professional for a period of time to go over everything in there and make a determination of how they can assist you with some of these other problems that you're running into constantly. I know that you only see this as one violation. This is a 365-day-a-year violation, because it's not just happening on the day they come in with the camera. That's a continuing problem that's not being addressed, but it's not being recognized. As the director says, not recognizing a problem is a serious issue in food safety and services, even in a convenience store where it's more packaged food. So, I'm recommending that you not only hire contractors to take care of the physical plant, that you hire a contractor or a professional that can assist you with the food service industry. Even if it's for a short period of time, they would be able to assist you to come up with a report like you wrote for your cigarettes, so that you have an internal mechanism and an internal system that you can follow, your employees can follow, and, we're not here to overly burden you, but we're here to make sure the public is safe, and that is a very small price to pay for public safety.
Yes, sir.
And we do have a list that we can provide you of, short list of food consultants that we provided to others. We don't recommend any, but we just provide you with a list. My question is, at what point does a facility need to have someone that's gone through the ServSafe certification?
Are you ServSafe certified? Yes, she is.
Okay.
They are offering refresher courses on food safety and ServSafe, but someone should always be at the store that's ServSafe certified. You're serving food, even if it's packaged. I know you're food safe certified. Is anyone else any other employees or yourself, sir? I don't want to say that I normally would think that when someone leaves the premises, there's no regulation that says the person has to be on the site 24 hours a day. But in your case, I think even having a backup food safe service or having you take a refresher course would put you in charge of dealing with maybe someone on the list in order to implement a policy that you could give your employees and say, this is the policy. The mop goes here. Even if you had to paint something on the wall where the mop goes. But these are the things that have to be done. And running a restaurant myself. I know it's a constant battle, but someone has to be accountable and responsible. Because we can't excuse, our only job is to make sure that people are accountable and responsible. We can't excuse this behavior, so never gets excused, it only gets remediated. And it sounds like, maybe,
Oh, the service area, there are no violations in the,
Yeah,
in the
that's
area
violation.
where the coffee is or where the.
Violation
slush
behind the
machine
store,
is.
in back room,
I
but
see
in the
you
front of the
store-
store,
You
yeah.
stored a number of the Coke carts in the store itself. Is there no place to store your returns outside?
It's really
You
small,
have your-
small.
You have your Pepsi and Coke deliveries come into the store, into the crates, and then the crates get stored in the store? Or do you store them outside?
Great. No, the delivery ticket,
So they're taking them right
yeah,
away?
yeah, yes.
You're not storing them inside?
No,
Okay.
But
Yeah.
sometimes, the employee.
Right, no, there's a couple of weeks. Just wondering what you're doing from a general storage standpoint.
There is not a lot of room. However, if it were organized and cleaned, it would be different, But there isn't not a lot of room. That's why you have to be over vigilant with moving things. They have a desk in the hall. It's hard to move around clean around that. Then they have old signage, things like that, you have to move things around. But those items, those can be taken care of quickly. But it's,
Those should go on the
yeah,
physical
yeah.
plant list,
yeah.
right? Or you're changing your tile, you're hiring a contractor, we're gonna move this stuff to storage, we're gonna get this stuff out of here. We're not gonna have things underneath the storage bins, we're gonna go to some sort of palletized system so that we know when stuff comes in, it ends up on a pallet. And anything off that pallet never gets put on a food service.
The cleanliness of the bathrooms is,
I have
a concern, of course.
three
Yeah.
questions.
Sure.
To the director, and thank you for the colored pictures there. Were you on the, let me ask this, were you on the inspection today?
I conducted the inspection alone, yes.
The one with the milk, if this is milk cartons, I'm wondering, can you tell me, is that like powder or something underneath it?
That's the dripping or condensation dripping off the, how when you grab a milk carton, sometimes there's that wetness or maybe a spill of some sort, but it's white milk that's dripped off them.
One other picture which I can't pull out, but is the light fixture broken or is it just dirty?
Light
The
fixture.
one light no, what's this one? Could you tell me that, Susan?
I can't tell.
switch.
Yeah, okay, so it's just dirty, it's not broken.
Oh, yes, it's
Okay.
dirty. It's a
Okay.
light switch.
Thank you.
That's in the
last one I have,
bathroom.
and it's
Yeah.
probably the most for me, because those being a union representative for many, many years, I both have to make sure that the people are taking care of their health and safety and everything else, but also the management isn't too burdened on finances, but I'm not happy that both in this document, which was last year's inspection, there was, it says that one says, out of order for the bathroom, and this one says not working. If I'm an employee and I'm there at 8 hours, my only alternative is put a sign out in front of the door and say, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then I'm going to it. I mean, I'm wondering where they go to the bathroom, so maybe I pose the question.
So there's
to
two
that.
bathrooms, and one of the two
Okay, two
weren't going, yeah.
So one has been, is it the same one that was out?
I
It's
don't
hard to say,
know.
but it's coincidental that, like Robert says, though, it's just, I would say that bathrooms are out more than just the 2 times we've done inspections. That's my only questions. I'm obviously concerned that these get remediated ASAP. Thank you.
Okay,
Go right ahead.
please do.
So you were told to remove that ice thing a year ago?
Richie's, yeah.
Slush.
The slush,
take out,
you were told by Ms. Boyd to remove it, right? And then you put it back out?
Yeah, last month, before we leave to Egypt. That's why we move it over there. We not use it. It's cold now. we remove it over there, and we put another cooler from Pepsi and Coke to be close to the cooler. That's why we remove
So
it.
it's not like you know,
No, we don't use it now. Most of them is empty.
what, is it, so it was a need on their part to move it closer to, or did they just put it?
I don't know. You walk in the front door, it's right there. It's
Without-
without any tape on it,
slush in
without, no, there's 6 cartons, a few of them are empty, a few of them have about half this much, but they were, anyone could open it and, you know.
She makes them.
It's no cups or anything over there.
It's even worse.
So you were cited for that, and then you turned around and did it again. So that's just a point. The other point is, if the front of your store looked anything like the back of your store, you'd have no customers. Nobody would go with that. In my mind, it's more of a, I know there's construction aspects of what you need to do, but if you don't clean them, you're gonna be in the same situation with that new floor, the same situation with a new wall.
And the public can use the bathroom, they do allow them,
Correct.
even though it says employees
You said
only,
there's 2 bathrooms.
you,
Somebody's gonna
they
use it.
can go back there. They do allow them, yeah.
So one thing I'd like to add, and what you're mentioning on the pictures, one of the pictures you took today shows one of the slush buckets with the cover moved, but with the scoop still
I
in.
moved the cover so I could see the scoop. That cover was not tight, but it was laid over.
Right, so I guess my question is, if that scoop has been in there since it was last used, and that's not too sanitary, and if something is there with the scoop in it, to me, that implies it's there for people to use it. And I'm also
Places, yeah.
curious, I'm
Places that
assuming
have
there's an
scoop.
expiration date on the slushes.
Yeah. And it-
I'm not so sure you have an expiration date, but you get to a point in the slush process
Yeah.
where it's no longer slush, it's soup.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
with
It's a little
experience-
crystallized,
with
that's for sure.
experience, with
They have a
experience-
slush machine, which was right there,
It's much
too.
more
It's
sanitary,
different. If
obviously.
they have one of those.
As long as it's being cleaned appropriately
Mhm.
and serviced appropriately. But having dealt with Richie Slush for a number of years myself, you know, it's a constant battle. I will say, it's a constant battle, even with employees using scoops. But obviously, it has to be controlled. We can't allow it not to be controlled by an employee. And that employee really should be served safe because he's serving a food stuff, right? And having it covered back up and having a protocol. These are the things we're talking about that we think we can make you better by having you approach someone on the service list and come up with a plan and have them use it. Use them to make your plan, submit your plan back to the Board of Health, and educate your employees on the plan. That's really why we're here, is to make sure that, you know, that's happening. And unfortunately, we can't be there every day. We can't be there 365 days a year. So we're asking you to police yourself by your own plan. We want you to submit a plan so that we can walk in with a plan and say, look, they're complying with their plan. They're doing everything possible to be compliant with their plan and the food safety code. But I think you have a little ways to go, obviously, to make that happen. From that standpoint, that's the third aspect of what we were talking about this evening. You have a list of construction. You have a list of things that are going to happen in the future with your consultant on how to maintain a food establishment and comply with the code. And you need to educate, and that's going to fall on you, to go out, take a refresher course in the food safety, whether it's online or whether you actually attend, if you're already serve safe, an online review, even a review of the materials that you're given is helpful, and you need to be able to translate those food safety protocols to your employees. But the way I see this is that I wouldn't be recommending that you have slush in the future unless it came out of that machine, and that the machine still, even that machine, you have to have it tested.
Yeah?
Not if it's not a milk product.
So if it's not a milk product, I'm not gonna worry about that?
They don't, it's not a required test.
Okay, so I'm sorry about the testing. But we would feel more comfortable with it coming out of a machine than the chances of someone reaching in there, either an employee not having a sufficient training or a customer reaching in there while you have your back turned or you're doing something else or you're busy. So from the third standpoint, and the education standpoint, I think that's fairly clear. But lastly, having Richie Slush in the store, I just don't see it as any upside for you. The risk outweighs whatever you're gonna make on that slush. I don't see it. I just see the risk as too great to allow you to keep that in there, and it should be removed, in my opinion, from the store. You shouldn't have that kind of risk. And obviously, if it's going to entail scoops without the proper places to clean them, sanitize them, et cetera, it's just not a good enough situation from what you have currently to leave it there. With that, if anyone has anything else, I'm almost ready to.
I got one thing to add, but Mr., I think you wanted to ask a question.
Are we, I'm just trying to get my own head straight here. So are we looking for them to come up with a plan, and they're gonna submit the plan, and then you're gonna go back out, or are we looking for a professional to come back in to?
I would actually classify that, Charlie, as we want a list of repairs, remedial repairs, and construction that's gonna go on in that establishment in the next 30 days by contract, so that we know they're bringing these floors, walls, and other areas that require immediate address. And I think you can do that with a contractor. Have them come in and do the floors, have them give an estimate on any ceiling or wall repairs that are necessary, so that you don't have to worry about those things. That's my first point, is have a construction list and submit it to the Board of Health with a contract. The second thing I was talking about was you need to speak to a professional on that list. Get a professional's help. How long do you need that professional's help? You tell me. Do you need it for 3 months? Can you put a plan together in 3 months? Can you implement the plan in 3 months? Or do you need a longer period of time?
Will we look for the consultant to tell us what they need?
That's
Right.
the first.
So they would come and assess it and make a recommendation. Yeah.
And that's the first report, and then they would tell us, and they would estimate how long we need help for.
And what I'll just add into this piece, as we've done in other instances, to also have a requirement that they need to have this consultant remain under contract until we have 3 monthly reports of no deficiencies noted whatsoever, because we need to know it's not just a one-time cleanup, but that they can continue the training.
Implementing that plan over 3 or 4 months gets everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
It's obviously the way to go.
And that's what you've done exactly
That's what we've
before, a
consistently
very
done
similar
before.
case. Yeah, that's
You know?
right.
So,
I forgot.
and obviously the last thing was for you to make sure that you're the one in charge about food safety and where it is that any of the other employees dealing with any of the product, that they have a place to come get an answer. The answer is from you, right? So your certificate's hanging in there, and you're up to date with the food knowledge, and you can answer the question, and you can spot a violation. That's what this is about.
But with that new code too, is that when you're not there, whoever is in charge must have that same knowledge, be able to answer the same questions. So it's up to you to train those people to be able to answer the questions when I ask, to what the risks are for something and all that.
So
So
what-
that's in your hands.
That's under the new code. You really have there's no variance to that. There's no excuse for that. It has to be done. You need a backup, and that's what the new code says. You need someone to back you up. So whoever you're training, that's your backup. They're the ones that should be dealing with the other stuff. Right?
Okay.
So with that, unless there's any other discussion,
No, I'm all set. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to see if we could get you back on track. One, I want you to bring us a list and a contract with who's going to fix your floors in the next 30 days. That's number one.
The
A.
bathroom or anything else that might need to be done.
Number two, I want the plumber to send a report that the plumbing is operating and there's no possibility that when he leaves, that the bathroom will be out of service. You may have to change your tank. You may have to change the stoppers in your tank. There might be a number of reasons, but you need to have a plumber go check those bathrooms so that we're assured that the employees can utilize a restroom when they need it. Has to be in service, right? And that plumber should be the same person you would call instead of putting a sign on the door. Relates to ceiling tiles, etc. I see one little hole in the wall. That flooring contractor may be able to take a look and see how he can help you and assist you with getting the place so that nothing is entering through the walls. There's no penetrations, open penetrations. Everything's sealed up, even around the pipes, right? That's just maintenance issues. And that's all I see from a construction standpoint. Do you see anything else?
A general contractor as opposed to picking out a plumber here?
I think they're fine picking local tradesmen to address these issues, a local flooring contractor, a local plumber who can show up when you need them. Those people should be on your list. They should be taking care of this stuff within 30 days, and they should have a contract with you so that you know, the Board of Health knows that you've addressed it. Moving on to the second thing, from the monitoring standpoint, picking a monitoring agent that you can work with. And I understand, sometimes language is a barrier. And, understanding what the monitoring plan is going to be, and that's why we let you select. If you have to call 3 of them, you have to call 3 of them.
Or someone you know.
Find out who best suits your individual needs, and then they're going to do 3 monthly reports, and you're going to be compliant on those 3 monthly reports, and they're going to suggest to you how you remain compliant after those 3 monthly reports. That's why you're buying those services. That's going to put the Board of Health at ease. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Well, I would say the first would be just an assessment and determining, what they needed to do. Give them an opportunity to fix those things. Then you do the report. Then do the report.
I'm sorry I didn't mention
No,
that.
no, that's fine.
But that's the purpose of hiring a consultant, is to get you to a point where you can implement so that the 3 monitoring reports can happen. So they will do an assessment, and they will report to the Board of Health what their assessment is and what their plan is. And they will keep you compliant, and that shouldn't be too expensive, but it's necessary for you to stay in business and stay in good standing with the Board of Health.
So the question there is, in what time frame should they have that consultant secured by? Within 30 days as well?
They're doing contracts within 30 days. Flooring, not necessary for a plumber, but to have a plumber on call, have an assessment, take care of those things. Look at the list, consult with the contractors over the next 30 days, enter into an assessment and monitoring agreement with that person, right?
Okay.
And the last thing is that you will be responsible for the future compliance with the food safety code, right? It's changing. Not only will you have your certificate on there, but you need to have a backup person that understands the ServSafe rules just like you do. And they're able to spot problems that can be addressed quickly without them manifesting into something that requires you to come back here on a violation. That's what this is all about, is having a pair of eyes that can discover these issues, address them, and do it before an inspection occurs, not after an inspection occurs. Right? That would be the basis of my motion. So one, the plan for floors, retaining a plumber, addressing the holes in the walls and penetrations, your construction plan. 2, entering into that agreement with a monitoring agent, doing an assessment, and having that assessment dropped off here so that we can come up with a plan. They will suggest how long it's going to take for you to implement that plan, and that's what we're looking for. We want their professional opinion.
And then where does the general re-inspections on these violations, cleanliness, when should I go back out?
How long do you suggest that it's going to take in your professional opinion to?
Well, organizing and cleaning shouldn't be more than a couple of weeks, you know, now that they're back from their vacation and such. And then it would give the contractor or the professional something to work with. It's kind of hard to work around all this stuff. So, I mean, but anyone can go and start cleaning all those light switches and other things and doors and handles and, you know, that should be done immediately, it shouldn't be waiting. So I would say for all cleanliness, at 2 weeks at the outset. Yeah.
So with that, the 2 weeks to clean up, you have the photographs, we'll get you the photographs.
Yeah, I have a set.
We'll give you a set of photographs. You'll know exactly what the cleanliness issues are. You'll know exactly what the construction issues are, right? You'll know exactly what the plumbing issues are. But the director's looking for 2 weeks for you to do the general cleanup, so she could go back out and say that, and that's gonna happen during the time that you're getting your contracts, talking to the consultant, et cetera. So that's the shortest window, and the most due diligence necessary is to get it clean and become back in compliance. You can simultaneously execute and get your contractor, your flooring guy in there to do an assessment, but the floor needs to be done first. You need to get that out of the way. Get your cleanliness done, get your flooring guy in there, so you have something to work off of, right? And the other things that can be taken care of, the penetrations, et cetera, at the same time. Then you move on to your plan, your second phase of having that consultant come in and go over the rest of the protocols necessary for you to stay in compliance.
Is this just like this, has there been a way, or was it?
I don't know. I was, yeah.
The thing is, if you don't have the ability or capability of cleaning this up within 14 days, in the past, we've had required a professional cleaning company to come in, which it can cost money as well. So you want to make sure you get this cleaned up to her specs, because
I don't think this is beyond the scope of a
I don't think so.
operator.
Defrost the freezer,
Right.
it gets, you
Listen,
know,
yeah, this is not beyond the scope. We
reorganize.
know what we're talking about. I mean,
No.
This is all within your reach and ability to get cleaned up.
Definitely.
This is general cleaning.
Yeah,
This just doesn't require a company to come in and do it. You need to do it yourself, because guess what? You're gonna be doing it all the time. This is part of your plan. I mean, you can see from here where the problems are. These are reoccurring problems. This is your list of basically what has to be done to your employees. Clean all the switches. Get that taken care of. Make sure the drippings are taken care of. These are the things that are happening, and they become part of your plan, because these are the things that are happening over and over again.
Okay, so we're gonna
To answer your
make,
to
yes.
follow to your question, you would do the cleanliness inspection 2 weeks, and I would say you would then go
Put-
back and do a re-inspection of the physical plant deficiencies once they have them fixed, so that you
Yeah.
know there's a good starting
Okay.
point, that everything has been,
Okay. So that doesn't need to be in the motion, I just need to know that. So the motion is so far 3-pronged, so it's contract for the floors, plumber, any,
General cleanliness over over that 2-week period.
Yeah.
You know that's not part of what we're doing here, that's part of what our director and the inspectors take care of, right? And obviously, the plan hiring the monitoring agent and having an assessment and reporting back to the Board of Health, you're going to pick someone from the list, and you're going to start working with them.
Or someone with equivalent training. There
Or
may,
with
there may be
equivalent
someone
training.
with specialized language or,
Thirdly, you're going to go back to ServSafe. You're going to recertify yourself so you're comfortable enough to be able to spot the violations and train a backup person. That's part of the new code. So we want to know who you're training, so I think you can identify that person to us, and that will be the backup person, so when the inspector goes up, it's either you or the backup person, right?
Answers.
I'll give them the color ones if you want.
And that's the basis of my motion, unless anyone has anything to add to it.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion?
I think that's
Had enough discussion.
okay, very complete. So the motion's been put forth and second. All those in favor of the proposed motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously 4-0.
We look forward to working with you. The only issue is that we've already resolved, and that's not part of the motion, because the slush has been asked to be removed and not replaced, correct? No slush buckets, no Ritchie slush out of a bucket, and no storage for the buckets. We're clear on that, correct?
All right.
You're doing that voluntarily, you're moving that out.
Okay, well, thank you both.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice holiday.
So I have a very brief follow-up question to this, because the same thing happened at the restaurant that we had to close in Euro. And something always happens right before our meetings, just without fail.
Well, this was
But in that
purposeful,
case-
because I knew they were coming, so I needed
One
to
of
check.
the restaurants was ServSafe certified,
Mhm.
and I think I'd asked before, there is no expiration of these certificates. So,
Well, there is a
No, they
renewal, there is a
reserve.
renewal date, not an expiration date, a renewal date.
is it a recommended or required?
No, your
Well-
certificate needs to be renewed by that date.
It's interesting that the code doesn't require it, but ServSafe and the other companies basically came up with their every 3 years.
Right.
It's not anything that's required. You know, the education of a person in charge is really important, because, you know, as you can see, well, she came in the midst of it, and, you know, I was trying to communicate with him about different things, so the more he would know would be better. Some communities I've worked in have implemented a certified person on staff at all times. The 2017 code, which is not the one we're implementing now, this is the 2013 code. 2017 code will be requiring at least one person certified on staff at all times they're open. We may consider doing a local rule ahead of time, because we don't know when that will come. If we find that that's a concern, that there isn't someone on there, because I have worked in communities where we always had one on staff at all times. Because then there's not that, oh, I didn't know, you know.
I think we seriously need to look at it, because we had
Yeah.
Mirabellas where they had no one on
Mhm,
staff.
mhm.
And I'm also concerned that we have people that are certified, but it seemed like you couldn't have, that knowledge to me should not evaporate within 3 years.
Well, I'll tell you, the knowledge, the knowledge from the course itself,
Yeah,
you see things that shock you. If they're not hard to forget, they shock you. You're shocked when you're taking the course. Then you see things that, you know, are just common sense, that you wouldn't possibly consider doing this because it's not common sense from the standpoint of sequencing. I think the harder part is that knowing some of the readings and rules, and that's why when we were in business, anyone who took the ServSafe course brought their book and left it at the store.
yeah.
And you'd be surprised, when we had downtime, we would tell people, take a look through the book.
Mm.
You haven't taken the course, but you need to take a look through the materials. And the materials are tabbed, because that's what we did after taking successive courses. You can't expect everyone to do that, but having the materials on site, I think is key. Having the Serve Safe book on site so that you can refer to it.
It's an easy read.
It
Like
is
the
such an easy
code
read.
is, the code is a terrible read. The code is awful.
Yes, but it's an easy read in the Serve Safe. And I'll tell you, it's not much different. If I'm constructing a house, the building code is on site.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're working with regulations and rules.
It makes it more real, though, once you see it. Yeah, you see it.
Because you know, the answer is right in front of me if I need to look at it.
Well, as you can see, well, if you looked forward, one of the trainings that we are going to be doing is on the new food code, because now we all have to do it. So actually, we're going to try and not have to educate everybody in our own town by, just us. I'm going to be talking to 2 or 3 other communities. We're going to set up 2 trainings in each community. We're going to advertise it to all our food places, and we're going to make it mandatory that they come and they learn about the food code changes. We're not necessarily going to say, this is how you wash a pan, but we're going to say, this is what you need now. You now need a vomit cleanup kit, and you have to have directions on how to use that kit, and everyone has to know how to do that, and everyone has to know when to tell their bosses that they are sick and why they're sick. So there are things that we have to check that are a little more, we always knew you had to do it, but I literally will ask an employee, do you know when you have to tell your bosses? Because they want them to know. There has to be a plan for that. So that will be happening, even though it's already implemented. We all need time to do this. So the 2013 code is already happening, but it's still going to take us a few months to get up and running. We haven't even ordered the new sheets yet. I haven't even found a vendor yet who's going to order them, so for the new inspection. So even though it's in effect, we need some time for training. But we're going to do it, so that they see every town is doing this. And we may have a contractor to help, but we want to do the training too, because we want to learn it. We have to relearn a lot of stuff. It didn't all change, but some things changed. But close managerial control, which is what you just talked about, doing it in-house, being responsible, for it, instead of going, wait, teach me when I walk in the door. No, you need to know. I want to come in, I just want to check things, and I want to go. I don't want to have 4 pages in a convenience store.
One of the things that we do in a lot of,
So, there we go.
a lot is that people create a sheet to show the difference between the 2013 code and the new code.
They've,
Just the differences, nothing else.
they've got a
just
ton
the
of
difference.
stuff. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff we put
Okay.
links onto.
And I
Yeah.
think that's important that
Yeah.
the people read, because it's amazing what you pick up just on the differences.
You didn't even know that existed in the first
That's
place,
right.
now you know.
It existed in the first place, now you've picked it up, now you've learned, not only did it exist, but it's been modified, and you're gonna comply.
That's
with
why I
the
know
law.
they read my letter, because everyone came in and says, where do I buy that vomit kit? So usually you never know whether they read it or not, but something about that word jumped out on everyone.
Yeah.
But, date and rotate used to be optional. Many companies already did it. But now, when you make a food, if you don't use it within that day, you have to put the date of when you made it, or when it's gonna be maximum use, and that has to be on there if it's a food that, could be potentially hazardous. So there are some things that people have been doing all over the place. They go, oh, I've already been doing that. Well, good for you. So that's great. So they may be doing a lot of things we already, we're just learning now.
Actually,
So,
a good
you know-
point is, if you open up a can of grape leaves,
Mm.
it has an expiration date. That expiration date is for when you open up and use the contents. It doesn't mean that, so then there is no way of knowing how long is that product safe to use once the can has been opened.
And first of all, you know not to leave it in the can, right? Nobody does that. So then you have to put it in a container with a sealed lid, you label it, the whole thing, and then if you're gonna dish some of it out later. I just thought they bought fresh grape leaves. I had no idea they came canned. That was a shock. But anyway, so we'll move on to, where are we now?
How expensive is the Serve Safe manual you were talking about? Is this a?
Oh, Serve Safe classes include the manual. They're $150, 100, 150
Yeah,
probably.
I've never seen it more than 150.
No, me
As a
either.
matter of fact, I've seen it group rates for $100.
Yes.
So if anything, I've seen, bring your friends and we can get you a deal.
Correct. Or if you
Bring
offer
your
your restaurant,
employees.
we'll give your
Right.
employees and
We'll
watch your restaurant.
come to the restaurant and conduct it here.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there to reduce the cost by numbers.
A lot of
employees.
restaurants do train their entire staff. They just like it. They like to have the certificates up there, and they like to show that they did more than we've asked. So notice that if you go out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, thank you. Okay,
thank you.
moving on to director reports.
So, let's see. What was I going to talk about? I'm forgetting where I am. Got a lot on my mind. Was I going to put the permitting enforcement? Is that what we were going to, did I hand this one out? No. not
No,
yet.
not yet.
So since it's New Year, I like to talk about good things. So, pass these down, I think. Yeah, there should be 4 there. So I created a little document just for your enjoyment. You can ask me questions later, but it's about the 2018 highlights of permitting enforcement. It lists new established food establishments that have done expansions, renovations. We've had a lot of extra oversight, so you can see what we've been up to. Grease traps that have recently been installed, Longs, Angelinas, at Winners. Lots of plans coming in. Housing issues, our complaint categories, our top 3 complaint categories are housing-related, food establishment-related, and environmental-related. We've done about 142 complaints so far this year, which is pretty average, I guess, between 150, 200, and that's if we put them all in. We're supposed to list every complaint that comes in. We've had a couple of new pools, which it's rare to have new swimming pools. We do that. 1 new body art establishment. And we had a grant from NACCHO, it's a national health organization. Shannon and I will be going to Nashville for a nice national environmental health time. And it's also about the food standards, so we're still working on getting our program standardized. And that's how we met the first step, so that's why we got the $3,000 to help us into the next step. But it's interesting, you know, we have the new ones, Bobby and Jack's, Happy Apples, Cakes by Suzanne. The Carter Street restaurant is not built yet, that's at the breakaway, you know, at the ice rink. Don't know when that's coming. And Magic Brushes, they serve food, they do ceramics there. I don't know if you've been to Al Fresca. I went the other night. They have a wonderful little market there on the side now. It's great. Had new McDonald's. Walmart's had renovation. They're actually going to do additional. They're going to start doing grocery pickup. You know, you do it online and then you drive in, pick up. So there'll be some more there. Pizza bars reopened with new owners. Villa Roma. Edible arrangements moved to Longs. Done a lot of work with some of the others. Just trying to get to know them. This is my, you know, entering, well, late in my 2nd year, so I'm still getting to know each one of our restaurants. I call them our restaurants now. So. And the grease trap is moving forward. Shannon and I are working on that, and Charlie's helping me with we need to get the existing grease traps inspected. So that's one of the things, not just get new ones in, but we need to make sure the existing ones are in good working order. So we're working on a checklist for that. So those are the fun things that we've been doing this year. And we're also working with the Attorney General's office, and we've had a couple of houses that, with their help, have gone finally for sale. A lot of people leave their houses sitting and decay, and neighbors have problems with, you know, the neighborhood values going down and such. And So they end up helping resolve the issues, helping them make decisions. And we currently are not in court with anyone, which is great. Knock on wood on that one. Not personally, with any of my order letters. So that's been our year. It's been a very busy year, as all are. But we serve at the pleasure, and we all enjoy working for this community and doing our best on a daily basis.
I'd like to just mention, though, I would have done it in March, but I want to mention that before I ran, I had multiple requests from people to say that in the past, and this is all previous, they said they were, we called back when they'd make a complaint. And I'd like to say, since I've been on the board, I've never heard anyone say that there hasn't been the same thing occur. So I'm really proud of our department that if anybody's calling a complaint, it's always
Sometimes the answer isn't what they want to hear, but we always respond.
One negative thing.
Respectfully, we always respond, even if it's something we cannot handle. We don't handle everything, contrary to our belief. But it seems that we do have quite a varied list of items we do handle.
Thank you very much.
Any questions about, No, it's privately, I don't know, I assume it's being flipped. It's being renovated. It was gutted.
Okay, that was the problem, right?
That was one of them, yes. Yeah. That was,
Charlie, what address was that?
Algonquin.
Thank you.
yeah. There was another one that just recently is just sold and is about to be demolished on Starbird. That was kind of a neighborhood eyesore for a while. But really, it was really with their help. They didn't really force it. It was a real, it was just a problem. They couldn't get them to sell it themselves. They just couldn't get there. So the judge actually ordered them, hire a realtor by Friday, get it on the market, and boom, somebody bought it. So it's a great piece of property, So there's a lot of nice, spots in town that have these houses that people are they're just sitting on them and they're just decaying, and the neighbors. We can't, handle all eyesores, but, you'll see one that's coming down soon, which is gonna be those cottages as you're coming in from Wilmington. They've been working on that, trying to get off the sign-offs, but those will be, and that is also as a result of
I worked with a guy
Attorney
in
General.
1978, and he lived in one.
He lived in one of those. So that is actually happening. That's been ongoing for a long time. So those will be disappearing, and there's not a big development. It's just because of our efforts and the Attorney General's efforts to, get it done. Get it done.
Kind of looks like hell
Yeah.
when you drive down there.
So I don't see all the abandoned properties. I have no problem if anybody has one to contact us. There's another one, actually a third one, another one that had a fire that a new buyer just got that as well. That'll be demolished as well. I think so. Yeah.
There's some of these restaurants that take out like coffee shops in the area around them, that just litter.
Trash.
What do we do with that? Do we just?
Hound them, right? They've got to clean up.
Right by the cabins, there's a mobile or a petrol
Yeah, yeah.
There's a little,
Is it all depression, filled with trash?
the whole bank is filled with, it just looks,
Oh, yeah.
coming down Main Street. You're on Main Street.
Mm.
Some of that ends up being town and state property, unfortunately, and,
Well, it's on the banks of what used to be the Shawshene.
And sometimes they're in these wind tunnels, and it's just like the Cumberland Farms, like a wind tunnel, it all comes flying down there, and the neighbors get so mad, it gets goes down into their yards, and
Probably not even allowed
it's a
to go where
battle.
You would need a conservation order in order to enter that area to clean it up.
Ah,
But there are groups out there that seek permission through the local conservation commissions to do cleanups in the spring
yeah, they do.
and fall. And, you know, maybe talking with conservation about whether there's a committee that is looking at those areas and encouraging groups to apply for the appropriate permissions and get the volunteers to do that. I mean, basically, that's how that gets cleaned up.
We had
Yeah.
them in here when we, in plastic bags.
Mm.
You just, maybe they could take a look over there. If you're hearing us, take a look.
So,
So any
Yeah.
updates on the electronic permitting?
I have a meeting tomorrow, actually, with the developer that we work with, his name is Zenny, with People GIS. Tomorrow, he's bringing me the first show of the results from all our meetings. Well, a couple of meetings we had, we gave them all our paperwork, all our applications, all our things, and he's been creating this permitting system for us. So he's going to lay it out tomorrow, and then we're going to set up a schedule, and it's going to be one tab at a time. So, you know, we'll look at, you know, the licenses for tobacco and make sure all the checkoff lists, and then we'll look for the licenses of this, and make sure checkoff lists, get those up. He has to now rebuild the new food code one, and that's probably the most complicated one because it has the 1999 code in it. So probably good timing, because we'll start with the smaller ones, swimming pools and such. And then I have permission to buy tablets to go ahead and, you know, then hopefully, I'm hoping, my goal, I mean, I'll ask him tomorrow, we're going to set the goals, but permitting definitely will be online, you know. I mean, not online, but permitting system will be implemented this year. Hopefully, tablet tablet inspections, maybe by this year, I hope. I know I'm gonna purchase it, so I wanna get started. Because everything will help. Think about me today. When I took those pictures with my phone. I came back. Do you know how long it took me to put those pictures and just put them in? I mean, it just takes time. You know, gotta put them down on the computer, then you got the computer and you gotta, I'm no expert with, you know, doing those things. I wanted to label them all for you, forget that. I didn't do that. This type of a system, it would be you'd take them, boom, go right into the file. So they'd be right there. And then we could look, oh, here's last year's, oh, here's the year before. Oh, look, I'm driving by this place. Oh, I could go do an inspection right now. Boom, bring up an inspection form, boom, do it. That's, you know, that's our dream, so.
Awesome.
So you say this year, in the next 2 weeks, or is this 2019?
Oh, this coming year, yeah, no, it's gonna take a while. So tomorrow is just, here's your delivery, and now we got to get to work. And then as I see what the product looks like, I can tell you how it's going and moving forward. Actually online permitting where someone can pay, don't know. Can it be done by next big permitting time? Sure it can, let's see, I hope it is, I don't know. Building department's been through a couple of years, they haven't quite, but they have a kiosk there and they're ready to go, I think they're waiting for Zenny. He's probably working on ours, but we really want this. We really want it, especially with the new code, because then you won't have, looking up all those new code references is just daunting. So if we have it in there, then it can just load itself in, you know, it would be great. So I have dreams, and he knows what our dreams are, but I did speak with one other community, who is using it, and they like it very much, so. There are many, many different technology, or systems out there type. Not all are perfect, none are perfect, but we hope ours will be useful, help us get the job done.
That'd be good to have that in place. Thank you for that update.
And speaking of that, the permitting, we did not have to fine anyone this year for late payment. And we also, because we're not permitting, the places like Dollar Tree, or anybody who sells prepackaged, non-potentially hazardous foods, those were some we really had problems with because they're corporate or, and they're like, why do I need a food permit? And it's not on their radar, so eliminating those 8 or 10 places, liquor store, place like that, it kind of narrows. So we're losing on that end, a little bit of revenue, but I think we're gonna pick up on some other ends where, as we're doing grease traps, we're finding people who are using companies that remove grease that aren't permitted. So, we say, oh, you're removing grease from this, you have to pay. You come to town, you gotta pay. So, it kind of balances. We work on one, we might go down on one, up on another. So we get a lot to do next year, and I hope in January, maybe we can talk about what your priorities might want to be, what regulations you'd like to work on, whether it be shoring up a tobacco or maybe tackling the dumpster, and definitely the body art I know is on people's minds. So those will be discussed maybe in January. Talk about what you're interested in, where your interest in our world of public health. What do you see as the new issues and problems? And vaping obviously is one that we'll talk about.
Any direction on deregulating anything, as opposed to we're gonna regulate everything because
Well, we did one, which was the bathrooms. That was one. We have to talk about that.
Well, we have a grease trap policy.
The policy for grease trap has been very
I
good.
think we're heading down with the number of changes we made to the pen regulations, et cetera.
Mhm.
I think we're on a track to be consistent, going through all the regulations to try.
You hear about Chelmsford? They've just been going through hell too.
Well, that's
Um,
kind of, I
dump-
asked that
yeah.
question,
Mhm.
kind of knowing the answer, but only the people can hear it,
Yeah,
because we're not just regulating everything we touch.
absolutely.
We're
Yeah.
kind of rounding off some edges here and actually deregulating a lot of things.
As in anything, there's not extra help. So as new things emerge that are really important, we have to look at sometimes things that, maybe have very low public health priority, that may or may not need our oversight anymore. Some things we have no ability to change, whether it be state statutory. But when we look at the dumpster regulations, it's really very difficult to enforce. And a lot of dumpsters are in industrial areas, behind buildings, and I'm asking them to enclose them, and we're chasing them and fighting, I don't know what the intent of that regulation was in the first place. How does it meet with planning, subdivision rules? They have rules, well, if you can see it, do you have to screen it? If you're on a private property, do I have to, we've talked about if it's a recycling dumpster, should it have to be enclosed? Because now all of a sudden someone wants to do something good and they now have to enclose something. But dumpsters, the good news, it's not a terrible regulation, it just might, how much time do we want to spend on? But on the other hand, trash gets everywhere from dumpsters, so we have to have some regulation, obviously. But yeah, no, I'd definitely like to look at, I don't think, look at each regulation, make sure has its significance in the public health.
Planning has an opportunity to impose conditions
Mhm.
when they are improving a site plan.
Right.
They have a dumpster location, they know it's coming.
Mhm.
There's an opportunity right there and then to impose conditions that are consistent with the Board of Health ideology on cleanliness, et cetera. So I think those things are already in place, and they have enforcement mechanisms, because a special permit holder can be called back in for a violation of what they've agreed to in their permit. And that's centralized, as opposed to each individual government body chiming in on
Mhm.
what they think their jurisdiction is in order to come up with an order. Certainly talking about that with the planning board in a joint group might be productive.
Yes, I have mentioned to Anna, we were talking about that, because, you know, they do come before, they do pick the location, they tell them whether it should be screened or not, and then I come along and say, oh, no, it has to have 4 sides, you know, it needs to be consistent. And then also, you know, in some communities, say in Billerica, they say, oh, well, your dumpsters only food. They only do food dumpsters, because that's where the public health significance is versus a dumpster that's just ugly and has mattresses in it, you know, or something, you know. So they've determined that they just do food establishment regulations for dumpsters in Billerica.
In the normal course of permitting, it's customary to reach out to all of the boards, including the fire department, police department, et cetera, to get a letter, just input letter.
They may have back when it was designed, I don't know, but so we're just re-looking at
Yeah,
things. you
and
know.
I think you're right, there's probably an opportunity that might come about that would assist when they're doing permitting, if they had the input from the people that are most concerned about it.
We also found out every regulation I've always had with dumpsters said you cannot dump your dumpster after a certain hour or before a certain hour. And I was challenged, and I went to town council and asked them, and the state Mass General Law does prohibit restricting commercial transport of solid waste for commercial. So the gentleman was correct that our regulation could not be enforced. So that being said, someone next to, say, a restaurant or next to a business can hear banging in the middle of the night if they challenge our regulation. However, if the planning board were to say to that new business, you are the responsible party, you can't have them dump. So you're not restricting the dumpster company, you're restricting the
And
the building, so,
that's the perfect part about
And that-
conditioning permits.
so,
Right.
but I never knew about that of 20 years, but it was one dumpster company challenged me on it, and the town attorney said, that's correct, we cannot enforce that nighttime rule about commercial transportation. Now, if you live next to where a dumpster, I mean, they drop that in the middle of the night, you just about jump out of bed. So I would still call if I get a complaint. I'm still gonna call, and I'm still gonna try and get them to not do it. But push comes to shove, I don't have the policy behind me to do it.
I think one of the things I'd like to do is and I haven't done it here for about a year now, where I'd taken all the policies and put them into this one overall
Yep.
thing. And
This is a great start.
the next phase of that was for us to go through all those and really look at what truly is a public health issue that we're identifying. Because we talked about the grease tank, grease trap as being maybe something more in DPW's area.
Well,
Look at these going,
I think, yeah.
do things really still belong under the purview?
Or
of-
like you found the tobacco, the one with the schools that we haven't, that's there, but no one knew it was there.
Right.
So we do need to identify. I mean, there's a lot, the book's this big. It's a big book with all the regulations.
First, that quick check of
Yeah, sure. Can
what
do
do
that.
we need? And then if the town
But
needs
the
it.
body art, I think,
Sit
is
with it.
definitely something that has to happen.
Yep.
So, because there's a lot of opinions and a lot of things out there. A lot of communities are making some changes. Might want to consider talking about caps on tobacco or licenses or, you know, body art or something, you know. There are ways to try and not have a rush on, if you happen to be the only community that only requires 300 hours, you might get 10 applications, you know, so you might want to think about those things, so. Because once you become friendly, people come, which is a good thing, but you have to have control over that. So I look forward to 2019.
One of the things I find very intriguing about, we have under whole public trainings forums is new food code. If there's a way that we can actually oversee that train town, then that would give us an opportunity, you folks an opportunity to address violations that you've encountered. Because
Mhm.
all this is hypothetical.
Mhm.
And if it could be more of a hometown type training. These
Yeah.
are things that we typically encounter, so that
we're engaging them more, food, as food establishments, and this is a way of doing it. So I sent out a letter saying, we're gonna have a train. Next letter is gonna say, this is what we're gonna do. Here's a few more tips. Here's a few more, just try and get that connection between us. That permit on the wall is not just a permit on the wall. It's an obligation to, uphold the sanitation and safety rules for the public. So if we keep reminding them that, maybe it'd be helpful. It's a big obligation. It's a big responsibility. People trust them. I respect people in the business because they really put, they got everyone in their hands, their trust.
Well, to me, the
So-
biggest thing with any type of training is great, but if you don't actually implement what you've been trained in, it's a waste. And
Yeah.
that seems a recurring theme as we have food establishments come in, the things that
Mr. Chairman,
not follow training.
I'd like to be dismissed. I'm going to try to make it to work by 9 o'clock, and we did a lot of work, and I'm thankful for everybody that's making an effort and doing a great job. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
Okay,
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
you too, George.
Thank you, George. Okay. And the fee schedule, obviously, that is something that has to be done.
Yep.
So we'll be working on that.
Susan, can I get a copy of that at some point?
Which?
The fee schedule at some point?
Oh, yeah. It's online, too.
That's, okay, thank you. Thank you.
But yeah,
That's all. That's all I
definitely.
need to know.
Yep. Got any other questions for tonight?
The only question I
Yes.
have is, if I can try to do follow-up as well. Has there been any follow-up from the town manager's office with you about the minutes and the
Not with me. No.
I'll follow up and see where that's going.
Any flu clinics? What's going on with,
No more flu. It's all gone. No, yeah, no, we've, I think she may even have a few in her refrigerator, not much.
there's still some available for people that are...
Oh, yeah, and you can always find it somewhere, but, yeah, no more clinics. We don't have very much left. I think they say it's fairly effective this year. I don't know, but they're still highly recommending it, so hopefully none of us will get it this year. Notice I didn't put, this was really enforcement and permitting highlights. We kind of give you Sarah's highlights through the year, so there's plenty of nursing highlights ongoing all the time. This was just something different because it's kind of the nuts and bolts and stuff that just goes on and rolls on. And I don't always tell you what's happening, but hopefully you see it when you're out there in the field too.
Oh, I was talking before about, have you gotten any more of the inspection reports in Burger King?
Yes, there's one right in your pile there. I think I popped it in to you right there.
Oh.
It just came this morning. I had called yesterday and her husband said, oh yeah, he's there today. So the actual report part is on the back, so it's just flip it over. So it appears that there's, continues to be improvement.
Which was to be expected.
What was the resolution with the hands?
It was a prep sink.
That was
I-
removed. Did that ever get?
I have not visually seen it, but I believe they told me it was completed, but I'll double check on that.
Okay.
Because I know there was issues with that, getting it done, so we'll see.
I have nothing further. I guess so.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, good, because I can't second.
Great.
the motion.
Thank you very much.
So I guess we still have a quorum, so we can end tonight's meeting.
Oh, yeah, otherwise, yeah, no more.
Okay, motion's been put forth and seconded to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously, 3-0. It is 7:45 PM. Good night, Tewksbury.